Welcome everyone to the INC Transportation Committee meeting for January 8th, 2026. We have 4 topics tonight. We're going to start with an overview of the Denver Sidewalks program, looking forward to 2026. And for that, we have the director of the DOTI Sidewalks Enterprise Program, Geneva Hooten. Next, we'll hear from the Alliance to Transform Transportation. This is an alliance that's looking to pave the way towards more funding for transit in the Denver metro region and beyond. Next, we'll hear from Amy Kenreich about a Alameda redesign. It's been in the press a lot and as a very important neighborhood topic and sort of part of a theme that we've been seeing about redesigns of projects after neighborhood involvement thought that a design was reached. That's very important for us to cover. And then finally, I'll go over our INC transportation position statements, which the INC board has asked us to update for 2026. So starting now with Geneva Hooten, I'll stop sharing and turn it over to you. We'll have about 30 minutes, including time for Q&A.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Happy 2026. I see a lot of familiar names and some faces on here. I presented to this group in I think it was spring, late spring of last year. And for those who don't know, I co-chaired this committee with Joel for 5 years. So I'm very familiar with INC transportation. And so today I'll be sharing a program update for you, including our 2025 accomplishments, 26 work plan, and then information on the sidewalk implementation plan. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, let's see how this goes. We don't work with Zoom as much as other platforms. So let me see if I go this way, how that looks. Are you all seeing?
We're not the presentation mode yet. We're seeing the mode with the thumbnails down the side.
Okay, I think this happened before, and we're gonna just roll with it. So, because of it, there's like a weird. Let me see if I go to full screen mode. How does that look?
It's similar but better. It's a little bit bigger. It's not the presentation mode, but it's
right.
It's close. It's close.
Okay. We're gonna roll with it. I think this happened last time. All right. So hi everyone. Just as a setting of the stage and a reminder, so the program came about through Ordinance 307, which went to the voters in November of 22. Then following that were a number of ordinance amendments that went through a committee to say, okay, how do we actually make this something that can go into code and can be implemented? And so those amendments passed through council in September of last year. We started revenue collection this year in 2025. And now with it being January of 26, we have 1 year of the Sidewalk Enterprise program being in existence. So for those who have seen this slide before, you'll also notice that we have some updated numbers, which is exciting. So what we are sharing today are updated numbers based on a new analysis that show that we have over 300 miles of missing sidewalks that need to be built. We have over 1,100 miles of sidewalks that need to be widened. And then we have definitely more than 1,200 miles that need repair. There might be a panel broken or there's more repair that's needed on that block. And so what this program is asked to do is to rapidly deliver and to scale something that we've never done before as a city in order to hit and make sure that we are building, widening, and repairing and creating a full sidewalk network. So let me dive into what this looks like. So the results of what we've done in 2025, and I will also caveat this by saying the data that's coming in right now is still being parsed through. A lot of data came from our permits that go through private development. And in many ways, those permits are great, but very imperfect. And so we're still working through this data to make sure that we have an accurate result for 25. So I'm going to share these numbers, but just know that some of them are probably going to tweak a little bit. In essence, we built over 8 miles of new sidewalks. These are delivered projects by DOTI and by private development. We widened just 0.2 miles, so lots of room for growth there. And then we repaired or replaced over 70 miles of sidewalks. And this is a combination of spot repair, private development, and DOTI projects. So, including in the new build, here are some examples of really lovely new sidewalks that were built through private development. And then also an example of a sidewalk that was built through a library branch project. Here again, we have some examples of widening. This number, 0.2, not great. I know that. I know that we have a lot of work to do in this area. And so far, based on the program setup, the projects that were completed this year were ones that were already in the mix and were moving forward. So for instance, Athmar Park Branch Library, where that new sidewalk is widened and establishes a new tree lawn. Through spot repair and private development, we had a ton of mileage. So I'll start with private development. This is when we have private developers that are coming through and then repairing or replacing sidewalk, which is amazing. This is a significant number of miles for us and is good for the city. It's good for the program because that means that we have sidewalks that are now up to snuff and repaired. We repaired over 5 miles of sidewalk through the spot repair. And I think that number in some ways might look small, but if you think about that is a panel here or a segment of panels there, it's actually work across a huge part of the city. So that includes work done in Berkeley, Sloan's Lake, Cap Hill, which we're still finishing, and we'll have some Cap Hill numbers to report for 26, and then about a mile in some other areas. The 2025 work plan was set based on 311 reported damage and areas of high concentration of pedestrian activity. I think that was a really good approach for 25. For 2026, we're looking to do this in a slightly different way, looking at a different analysis that makes sure that we're not just relying on 311 data, knowing that that is an imperfect way. And we have lots of folks in the city who have damaged sidewalks that aren't going to be submitting 311. So we're working on that. We're setting our work plan for 26 and we'll move forward. Okay, so where are we going? Oh, and let me say as well, the work accomplished in 2025 is all that will be summarized in our first ever annual report, which is due next month. And so as we're working through the data, summarizing what was accomplished and establishing our 26 work plan, that's the kind of content that's going to go into that. We will be working with the DOTI advisory board this month and next month, and then it goes to DOTI advisory board for more formal comment, and then we'll publicize it. I truly can't remember if we're publicizing it at the end of February or very beginning of March, but relatively soon. So looking at 2026, our budget this year, very similar to most budgets, are split between 3 different categories. We have capital maintenance spend, capital discretionary, and operating. And we still have this very clear and urgent purpose to build, widen, and repair sidewalks. Maybe not as important to you all, but very important to me in my day-to-day is how do we do this? What are our contracting mechanisms? So we have on-calls, we have integrated construction contracts, which is an alternative delivery, and we have other construction on-call contracts. So this allows me and allows us as the city to make sure that we can be actually scaling and delivering this work. And then I'll go more into some of the details. So next year, we are in 26. This year, we are going to be completing projects where design is either currently underway or final. In some cases, that also means there were projects that maybe were de-scoped or there were elements that weren't going to be able to be built because of a funding constraint. Sidewalk program has funding and can lend that to those projects in order to build the full scope. An example of this is there was a project designed through along the City of Brest Park, kind of off of Cherry Creek. That project didn't have construction funding. I can come in with the program and say, that seems like a really good project. We can lend funding to that to make sure that that's going. We're also able to gain some efficiencies and economies of scale to see where we can bundle projects, which is really important. And then within the program and in conjunction with the bond team, we are delivering the Elevate and Rise bond sidewalk projects. So the other exciting thing that we're going to be working on next year is a pilot of field fit construction. So this photo, I think there could be better examples of sidewalk projects that aren't great field fit options, but this is one that gives us, at least on two sides of the street, a different view. So in essence, where we're trying to go is to say, we know that there are tons of sidewalks that need to be built in the city. And many of those projects are ones that have long design timelines, whether that's because we have complicated design, complicated drainage, establishment of curb and gutter, utility relocates, right-of-way acquisition, which takes a long time. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why sidewalks are tricky to build. On the left side of your screen, you'll see that, in fact, it does appear that there's sufficient right-of-way, but we have a big utility pole and then maybe some additional drainage challenges. On the right side, we have almost no existing landscaping. We have sufficient right-of-way, and it's a pretty straight shot. So this is one where we probably don't need to go to 100% design and instead can go to a 30% design or something less than 100 and allow our contractors who have the expertise in how to do this to install. There are lots of advantages to this. Again, it's not for every project. There are a million good reasons why we still need to go to 100% design on a lot of projects. But this year, while we're working on a whole citywide approach, I want us to be testing this. So where we're going is we are piloting and first going through an analysis. So we're taking all of the city blocks and all of the city characteristics that we know and saying, could these be good field fit candidates? And then we're running through, like, some of these have fatal flaws. They're not great candidates. Some are. And then we're going to identify some segments and work to move those into 30% design and into construction this year. This is going to allow us to learn institutionally how that's working, where we may need, where we think it's a good field fit candidate and it's not, etc. So this is going to be an exciting approach to how we're going to be delivering and building new sidewalks in 2026. And then the other big piece of where we're working next year is improving and expanding upon our spot repair. These are a couple of photos that I took in District 10 in December. So this is an example of some of the spot repair work that's been going on. In total, in 2026, there's almost 8 million allocated for spot repair. It's more budget than this past year, with a slightly different approach to how we're going to be prioritizing. Some of this is going to be on an individual spot repair contract, and some of this is also going to be part of a new leveraged approach. So many of you are familiar with the fact that DOTI, the city, are replacing curb ramps across the city to make them ADA compliant. In instances this year, that work stopped at 15 feet from the curb. And we know that there are often broken panels of sidewalk that happen at feet 16 to 25. And so while our teams are already out there doing the work, have already mobilized, have already done all this, that's also going to be an opportunity for additional sidewalks to get fixed along with that. So it's another pilot approach that we're testing out for this year. I think it will allow us to get more done faster and is going to help in overall fixing more sidewalks quickly. Then this is mostly just for fun. I'm sure many of you have seen on sidewalks across the city and in your travels stamps. It very often includes the contractor, sometimes the city, and then the year that a sidewalk was installed. I love these. I think they're great. It shows, you can see like, wow, that sidewalk has been here since 1955. That's very cool. So we will be launching a public art contest, soliciting feedback and what's the word for it? Submissions from the public. This is not just for professional artists. This is for students. This is for anyone who wants to participate. It's an open call to all community members. It will go through a selection process, and then we will have a sidewalk stamp that we can use. This will make it so that when we are fixing a sidewalk, building a new sidewalk, it has that stamp that shows everyone who is walking or rolling on that sidewalk. This is part of the city's sidewalk program, and it'll have the year that it's installed. So more to come on this, but this is one of the things that we're going to be working on this year. And then the other really big effort that's happening concurrent with all this good design and construction and spot repair is the sidewalk implementation plan. This was called for via the original ordinance. It's called for in the code. In that language, it says sidewalk master plan. We're getting away from that language and instead calling it the implementation plan. And this is asking the questions, or it's answering the questions of where, when, and how we are going to be addressing all the sidewalk need in the city. So where we want to get, and that this will conclude at the end of this year, is that we will have engaged and had meaningful engagement with residents and key stakeholders across the city, that we have been purposeful in our collaboration and coordination with all the other people who work in the sidewalk space, that we have much better inventory data, costing, and a funding understanding, that we have consensus on a construction approach and delivery, geography and scale. So I think every single person in this room, virtual room, could say, I think that we should fix this first or this first and these areas first. And so we need to all come together and make sure that we have a data-driven approach that is feasible, that is focused on, okay, how do we actually get this done? And that it will be then an implementable capital investment plan that will move us directly into design and delivery. And so from an engagement perspective, we are just kicking off like today. Today, the story map is going live, and we'll have a lot more that's happening next week. But this first round of public engagement is asking about priorities for sidewalk construction and repair, as well as doing our best job of trying to educate and say, this is the state of the system. Here are our known constraints and challenges as we work through sidewalks. And therefore, this is how we want to use your input to move forward. Excuse me. Gosh. In the spring, we will then be having another round of engagement. At this point, we'll have much better costing data, and we'll be asking more questions about what are your feedback on the phase and stage of the work. So how do we take all of this and prioritize and start developing work plans? And then in the summer is when we will be sharing those draft work plans, which will show where and what's the mix between building, widening, and repair that makes sense on a year-to-year basis. So as I mentioned just today, and my gosh, I really hope that this hyperlink works for you all. I think it went live about two hours ago, is this very cool story map. You all have seen these before. They are cool. They allow for, instead of it being a PDF that's very static, this allows you to go in and really parse through a lot of the information that we have. So you can look at what kind of sidewalks we have, the material type. You can look at this by council district. You can look at width. You can look at where it's deficient. We have all this information. And then as you go through the story map itself, we also are providing history, context, standards, lots of those construction considerations that I mentioned before, like right-of-way and drainage and parkways and trees. And like there are all these things that make it challenging and make it so that we have a lot of work to do to figure out how to move forward. And so this is up really recommend that you all get through it. And then at the end of it is a survey. It's pretty brief, but I would recommend that you take some time, dig through it, and get to the survey. And part of this, of course, is a citywide summary. So if we take all of the streets in the city and look at that, we know that we have 9% of all sidewalks in Denver are missing. This number says 318. My previous slide said 2 something. So I need to flag why those are different numbers, and I apologize. I will figure out why those are not the same. We also are showing that, of course, we have over 1,100 miles that need widening because they are not at that minimum standard. So think about all of those Hollywood sidewalks that we have. Think about all of the sidewalks that are just simply not meeting our standard. We need to be widening those and bringing them to standard. And then as of the data that we have, and I will say that this is probably an undercounting, based on the data we have, we're seeing that 1,200 blocks would need to have some kind of repair on them based on, again, our current information. Now, anytime we go out and walk a corridor, we're going to be finding different things that could be replaced or fixed. So again, I think that the repair is probably some of the least, it's good data, it's telling us a lot, but I think that that's probably an undercounting of some. And so where we are with this, apologies, I think this slide should have gone a little bit earlier, but essentially where we are is we're launching the state of the survey. We're doing tons of council briefings this month, meeting with DOTI advisory board and community advisory groups, including this group. Joel is a member of our community advisory group for the implementation plan. We will have a telephone town hall on the 4th, which is going to be very brief. It's really just an audio only experience for folks, explaining kind of what we're doing. And then we're going to have a full Zoom webinar, town hall, however you want to call it, on February 11th. Additional stakeholder meetings, pop-up community events, and more. So we have a ton that's going on this first quarter of the year to get as much engagement as we can, really set the stage and help people understand where we are today and where we're trying to go with this plan over the next, 10, 11 months or so. So our call to action for you as members of INC and as engaged members of your RNO is to please look for yourselves at the state of the system and survey and share that with your networks. Please connect us with your RNO leadership as desired. If you would appreciate someone from our team coming in and giving a version of this presentation, having that direct dialogue with your RNO, we'd be happy to do that. As always, we have direct individual questions that can be sent to our shared inbox, which is sidewalks@denvergov.org. You can also sign up for project updates on our website. We have a website specific for the sidewalk implementation plan, and then one that's specific to active sidewalk construction. And the next steps for this implementation plan are, of course, to be educating and gathering that input. We need to then be integrating all of this with the behind the scenes technical look. And then in the spring, sharing those proposed work plans. And then, of course, once this is done, we're initiating design and construction and delivery. So, I'm sorry. Sometimes, we've been working on a lot of slide decks. This one is not perfect, and I apologize. That really concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, let's just rapid fire take some questions. Alejandra had one from the beginning of your presentation. Alejandra?
Yeah, hi, Geneva. I'm wondering what you mean by private development. What does that mean? What does that entail?
Yes, so that would be, for instance, there is an empty lot that was at one point something, and then it was raised, and then you have a brand new multi-use building that is established. That then changes the nature of that block, and that private developer is the one who is responsible for building the sidewalk.
Does that apply also to single-family homes, for example?
So this is in this is recently changed. It used to be that there was a dollar threshold. And I'm actually just going to stop sharing so I can see faces. It used to be that there was a dollar threshold. So for instance, if a single family home went and had this big addition added to it and did a big renovation that cost $200,000, that then tripped this wire that said, yes, the sidewalk needed to be improved. That's since changed, where we are now establishing that there needs to be a nexus between the kind of development and the requirement to improve or bring the sidewalks to standard. So for instance, let's say there's a single family residence that then gets turned into a 8-plex, where you have now 8 different condo buildings on that one plot. That is a different intensity of land use, and therefore would trip the nexus, and we would then require that developer to bring that sidewalk to standard. If a single family residence is staying that, it wouldn't trip it. So it's changing is what I'm trying to explain, and it depends.
Okay, let's try to sneak in a few more questions here. John Ricky had one about driveways.
Hi, John.
Hi, Geneva. In your presentation on the field test slide, I noticed you were crossing a driveway, and I was wondering, when you will be doing that, will you be bringing the sidewalk down to the driveway slope so that the sidewalk is crooked, or will you be bringing the driveway up to the sidewalk so that the sidewalk is continuously flat across the driveway? Thank you.
Yeah, the standard is that the sidewalk remains level and then you have a driveway at a slope. In some instances, that's not possible, and therefore there's some additional engineering that happens, but generally the sidewalk is level and the driveway is not.
Tom had a question about materials.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Are you doing anything with lower carbon concrete?
Yes, we are. So we are looking. First is to say that we know it's important and that we have citywide sustainability goals, and that concrete is a huge producer of greenhouse gas emissions. So programmatically, we are looking at low carbon concrete. We're first documenting its availability, looking at the feasibility, the cost, best practices, life cycle cost analysis, and other considerations. Really important for the program are to understand its durability and longevity. So we're doing this analysis concurrent with the sidewalk implementation plan, and then coming forward with an assessment to see how or if it can be incorporated into the program in a way that still accounts for the risks, cost, feasibility, all of that.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, David had a question about determining responsibility. David Roberts.
Here we go. So I got an egg on my forehead from falling on your sidewalks in lower downtown, and I'm trying to find out who's responsible for the repairs. Sometimes we're told it's a business improvement district, like on 16th Street. Sometimes we're told it's the abutting commercial property owner. Sometimes we're told it's the city. How do we know what problems to bring to you and to get them included into your assessment of the state of the current sidewalks in this?
Yes, absolutely. So the best way is to submit that as a 311. So the way that you'll do that is we'll need to have a photo of where you tripped or where the sidewalk is damaged, and then that will come into our system and it will get logged. You are raising a great point, which is we have in a lot of cases an overlapping sense of jurisdictions. These are all done for sidewalks, but in some cases we have metro districts, we have business improvement districts. So we're still working through all of that on generally a case-by-case basis. But yes, if you want to email us as well, but 311 is a really good way to make sure that we know exactly where that was so we can get it fixed.
We just, I don't want to take more time. We just don't get any response. I've been sending stuff to 311 for 2 years on missing panels in the sidewalks and literally get no response.
Okay, that's good to know. Generally, our team has been super responsive, so I'm surprised to hear that, but I understand. If you would like to forward any of those to the Sidewalks at Denver Gov email and ask for a status update, I think that would probably be appropriate.
Then again, where do I send them? Sidewalks at denvergov.org.
Yeah, I will put it into the chat.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
And by 311, you don't necessarily mean the phone number. It's denvergov.org/311. Is that right? And there's a specific form for Sidewalk?
It's not necessarily a specific form, but the online portal does work pretty well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That answers a couple questions from Susan and Thomas. I did want to mention that we will be posting this video on the INC YouTube channel within about a day. So for those of you who want to review it, look again at the slides, or of course share it, please do. I'm going to sneak in just a couple questions here. First, you talked about your program is delivering the Elevate and Rise bond programs. Does that mean that the money from those bonds shifted over into your program and you're the execution arm, but you got the money from those bonds?
Yes and no. The bond funds stay truly on the bond side. It's more to say that from the public's perspective, a sidewalk is a sidewalk is a sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I work very, very closely with the bond team. The outreach, many of the design are happening through my team. It's a collaborative approach. And so this is to say that as we are building sidewalks in 2026, a number of them will be bond sidewalks with collaboration and support from the enterprise program.
Okay. And then speaking of bonds, after the implementation plan is done, will your program be able to pivot to issuing bonds as your enterprise was set up to be able to do to accelerate implementation?
Yes. So one of the pieces that's happening concurrent with the implementation plan is a whole financial analysis, which is looking at how do we go. Right now, we are on a pay-as-you-go model, meaning we have the funds that come in through our fee payers, and we spend the funds every year. Now, that is a way to go, but it won't allow us to build as many sidewalks. So we are looking at a lot of different options, including issuing debt, revenue bonds against the enterprise program, and that analysis will feed into the implementation plan itself.
Okay, great. We need to move on. Alan, I see you raising your hand. Go ahead, sneak one in, and we'll move to our next presenter.
About specific types of neighborhoods. Number one would be Villa Park, which is probably our largest neighborhood, and it has severe sidewalk problems.
Yeah.
How are you going to attack that?
Yes, that's a great question. So Villa Park is definitely on the list with lots of other neighborhoods across the city that have deficient sidewalks. So how we are going to be approaching those and how do those rank against all the other sidewalks that are needed for, do we widen sidewalks faster than we build new sidewalks? Do we address the gaps first? That trade-off we've yet to answer, and that's what we're going to be working on through the implementation plan. And then it will be prioritizing. So maybe it's Villa Park over this neighborhood or this neighborhood over Villa Park. All of that is the work and analysis that we'll be doing over this next year.
And the other question goes to the other side of town. Neighborhoods such as Hilltop and Crestmore and Country Club, are they going to get sidewalks, I hope?
Yes, great question. So for those who are not aware, that we have neighborhoods in Denver that have historically been exempted from sidewalks. And that means that it is not a requirement of any new build or retrofit build to have sidewalks there. Crestmore Park is one of them. There's a tiny bit of Inspiration Point Park or parts of Country Club. All of that stems from a rule and regulation that was established in 2007 and even from previous to that. The ordinance does supersede that rule and regulation. but we still need to update that rule and regulation. So we will eventually be making sure that we have a full sidewalk network across the city. And from a good government standpoint, we also need to make sure that we're updating that rule and reg. So long story long, yes, but there are a lot of steps that need to be taken to get us there.
I'm sure. The other question, the last question really is the parkways.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I don't know what we're going to do on parkways yet. They are really, really, really tough. We know that we need sidewalks on them, but I don't have an answer for us. I'm not sure.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Geneva.
you.
Congratulations on your role, and look forward to a very big year getting clarity on how we're going to tackle this over the next 9 years.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Danny Katz and Jill Locantore with the Alliance to Transform Transportation with an update. They've been doing a lot of work around the city and the region, getting input from folks, and this can be an important update. Either of you can present. You are set up to share your screen if you like.
All right, I'm going to kick things off, and then I'm going to hand it off to Danny as my co-conspirator. Can you all see my screen now?
There's something about Wikipedia.
Really? I don't have anything up about Wikipedia. That is so random. Let me try again.
Future in motion.
All right, excellent. I have to find out where on my computer I have Wikipedia. So you all know me primarily as the executive director of the Denver Streets Partnership. The Denver Streets Partnership is part of a larger regional coalition called the Alliance to Transform Transportation. As Joel mentioned earlier, a lot of our work is focused on trying to pave the way for increased funding for transit. And as part of that, we've been hosting a series of town halls around the RTD district to have a conversation with community members about if we had significantly more funding for transit, what would improvements to our transit system look like, and what kind of benefits could we accomplish with that? So the PowerPoint that Danny and I are going to be sharing with you tonight is a variation on what we've been doing at those town halls. We're going to have a few more in 2026. They have not been scheduled yet, but we'll be sure to share that with Joel so he can get that information out to you all if you're interested in attending them. But these are intended to be a conversation, not just us telling you what we think better transit looks like, but we also want input from the community. So we have some polls embedded into our slides. You can participate via your cell phone or your computer by going to menti.com and entering the code at the top 15609783. And can answer these questions. I'm not seeing any votes coming through. So are people able to access the poll? There we go. Okay. So the first question is, how do you typically get around Denver? If you use more than one mode, you can select more than one option here. And also feel free to add comments in the chat about why you answered the way you did to these poll questions. And when we get to the Q&A part of the presentation, we can talk more about that. I'm loving that walking is in the lead as one of the main ways to get around. I'm going to give people a few more minutes to see if they can get onto menti.com and contribute to our poll. I am not drinking a beer, by the way. This is just a soda that I am drinking. Walking, still in top contention here, along with biking. All right, in the interest of time, we're going to keep going. So the next question for those of you who take transit, how often do you use transit? Or those of you who don't have the option of answering never here as well. So it looks like we're getting a pretty good split between people who use it pretty frequently, like at least once a week, Whereas a few of you who only use it a few times a year. This is pretty common. What we're finding in our town halls and other ways of getting community input is that for a lot of people, they take it to the airport when they go visit friends, and then for other people, it's about getting to work or school or other more regular destinations. So tell us, what are the destinations that you are using transit to get to today? Is it to go out to eat? Is it to visit family? Are you going to church or the synagogue? Other ways of having fun, like going to a Broncos game or to a concert downtown? Are you using it to commute, to go to work or school, access community services or healthcare opportunities? And we are seeing with your results, it's pretty consistent with how frequently you use it. Those of you who are using it to go to work and school are probably those who are using it at least weekly. But a lot of you are using it for fun, which might be just going to the occasional sporting event or concert. But also seeing community services is a really important reason that people use transit, was healthcare and things like that. And then this is our final poll question for this section. Tell us how much you agree with these statements. Denver's current transit system is useful to you as it exists today. You wish it was more useful for you. You would actually use it a lot more. And whether you use it or not, how important do you think transit is for the Denver region?
While people are answering, Jill, John's the first one out of all of our town halls to point out we didn't have an airport option on the last slide. That'd be something to add, because it would be interesting to see if everybody uses it once a year for the airport, or that's only a small subset. So let's add that in the future.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Looks like we've got nearly unanimous sentiment that transit is important, and a lot of desire for transit being more useful, because right now it's only kind of useful for a lot of you. Well, we definitely agree that transit is important for the Denver region. That's exactly why our coalition came together. And really, it's because transit intersects with so many different aspects of our quality of life here in Denver. The most obvious one is just our daily commute or trips to wherever we're trying to get on a regular basis. As more and more people are moving to Denver and to Colorado, if we don't have options other than driving, that just means more cars on the road and more traffic, and nobody likes traffic. But when we have options like transit, it gives you more freedom and choice to get around, and you can leave the driving up to somebody else who's being paid to drive, and you don't have to worry about it. It's also important to affordability, a big topic of conversation. There's actually been some news about people leaving Denver and Colorado because it's so expensive. That's not just housing. Transportation is the second highest cost for households. Being able to drive less or even own fewer cars can contribute to significant household savings. We all know that cars and driving are a huge contributor to air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. So the more we have options other than driving to get around, the better it is for our environment and sustainability. I think an underappreciated aspect of transit is safety. Virtually every single fatal traffic crash involves a personal vehicle driven by an individual, whereas riding transit is one of the safest ways for people to get around. We've had basically no deaths of transit passengers. At the same time, we've had hundreds of people dying on our city streets from crashes with personal vehicles. So the more people choose to take transit, safer our streets are for everybody. And obviously, it's important for our economy, allowing people to access jobs and schools, and it helps improve public health by incorporating activity and active transportation into our daily lives. But our current transit system is not quite where we would hope it would be to help us actually achieve all of these benefits for our region. And a lot of that is because our service levels are lower than they ideally would be. Like a lot of cities during the pandemic, RTD really cut back on service during the pandemic. Unlike other cities, we haven't done much to reinstate those service levels after the pandemic. We see cities like Salt Lake City and Seattle that have really invested in bringing their service levels back up, are also seeing their ridership going back up. The more transit's available, the more useful it is, more people will use it. But here in Denver, we're still about 80% of where we were before the pandemic. And in fact, our bus service levels are lower than they were all the way back in 2003. So it's not surprising that our ridership levels are also pretty low here in Denver. And the reality is, it's been over 20 years since we had a conversation as a region about a vision for transit and how we could invest in making it better. Voters approved fast tracks in 2004. And we did see some successes from that investment, including nearly 80 miles of new rail service, new almost bus rapid transit. You could argue whether it's actual bus rapid transit on the US 36 corridor. Of course, the Union Station Transit Hub and all the amazing development that happened down there is because of fast tracks. And we have seen improvements in our transit system beyond fast tracks. We've made some refinements to our fare system, including better discounts for low-income folks. We're starting to invest in bus rapid transit on corridors like Colfax and micro transit services like we see in Montbello and now in Southwest Denver. But again, our overall service levels are still lower than they were before the pandemic and even lower than they were in 2003 before voters approved fast tracks. So we would argue that the time is ripe for us to come up with a new vision for the future of transit that responds to our, the world as it is today in 2026, not in 2004. We need to update this slide, Denny. So it says it's 22 years since we passed fast tracks. And so that is why the Alliance to Transform Transportation came together. These are the various organizations that are participating in addition to Denver Streets Partnership and CoPIRG. We have a number of different environmental groups. We have labor representing the workers who operate and maintain our transit vehicles. We have Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, thinking about access for people with disabilities. NAACP, Servicios de la Raza, representing some of the populations that are most dependent and would benefit the most from improved transit. And together, we've been working with the community to come up with a vision for what would improved transit service look like for the Denver region. And that's what I'm going to hand it off to Danny to talk about next.
So, we wanted to put together a vision. We wanted to put something out that people could react to. People like you, legislators, local government leaders, folks all across the region. And so we sat down and we looked at, okay, but what really makes transit work? We wanted to really have our vision built on what really makes transit work. And there's a number of things that matter. So this slide kind of shows you that there's a number of things that matter, but ultimately frequency is king. It looks like across the board, wherever you go, if you can have frequent transit, and there's a magic moment, that 15 minutes or less piece. So, kind of if a train or bus comes every 15 minutes or less, that's when you really start to see people hopping on. And you start to see some really big ridership numbers. And it makes sense because that 15-minute mark kind of gets you to a point where you don't really even need a schedule. You can kind of rely on a bus or train coming, pretty soon when you head out to a bus stop or a station. It's also important that that frequency isn't just a 9 to 5 frequency. So there's a lot of people who use transit early in the morning, late into the evening, whether that's when their jobs are or whether that's when, as you saw earlier on the slide, the fun happens. So frequency is really important, and we have found through the data that we've looked at, frequency really is the king. That said, there are other things that matter, and so fast is important. So you can see what we mean by that, direct routing, getting people on and off more quickly and easily, having the reliability around the transit service, though frequency makes a big difference there. Doesn't matter if your bus is late, if there's another bus 5 minutes behind it. So reliability, though, there's a number of things you can do there. Safety is a big part of this as well. And then connected is another piece of this. So making sure that the schedules are connected. Very rarely are you going to take a bus or a train directly to where you need to go. Oftentimes you're going to have to hop on something else. So we have found, generally speaking, frequency is king. But it depends on where you live, and you might have pretty good frequency. So what you really want is more speed, or you might be in a place where it's really the safety component that's really the thing that would make transit more useful for you, and something that you want to use. And so we wanted to go to the next slide here. I think we're still on a Menti. So if you're still in that Menti system, so if you take that phone back or you go back to the page on your website, again the code is up there if you've dropped out. But we wanted to ask the question, data is data, but it doesn't necessarily tell us about your life and your experience. So based on your life and your experience, what do you think would be more useful? And we have a number of options here. So if you go to the next slide, we can see how people are weighing in. So again, these are the different options, and you can kind of rank them. And as people rank them, as you all rank them, we'll be able to see this little spider web kind of show us what seems like the thing that would be most useful for folks, for you all and who you're kind of representing in this Denver neighborhood collaboration. So again, if you kind of get back into that Menti poll and see what are those things that kind of matter in in your community, how would you rank them? And it looks like half of folks have basically voted at this point. And it looks like connectivity, personal safety, and frequency seem to be actually, sorry, reliability. Connectivity, frequency, and reliability are up there. Safety, another big one as well. And that every area, like I said, is different. So it's kind of interesting to see, based on people's perspectives of transit, what would be most useful for you. As you can imagine, when we were out in Lone Tree, we've asked this question when we were down in Littleton, all over the place. So, the region is pretty big. If you go to the next slide. So let's get to our proposal. So here's what we want to put out to you all and what we're putting out to the region. Why don't, for our next big thing, the next big fast track, so to speak, why don't we just do a lot more frequent service to a lot more parts of the region? The second bullet point really encapsulates the vision the best. We want to double the amount of people who live within a 10-minute walk of frequent transit service. And again, that's that service that comes every 15 minutes or less. So we want to double that. Right now, it's about a third of people. And remember, RTD, big service area. So we're talking from, Netherland and Longmont all the way down to Parker and Lone Tree, Littleton, out to the airport, Aurora. It's a big region. In that region, about a third of people live within a short walk of frequent service. We want to double that. We think the vision should be, let's just get more service going to double that. A lot of that would be through bus service. So really boosting up the amount of bus service that we have. And we can talk about why leaning into bus service if people have questions about that. And then we really want to make sure we want to extend that frequent service to earlier in the morning and later into the evening and throughout the weekends. So again, this is something that, it just wouldn't matter the day, it wouldn't matter the time. There'd be frequency, really good frequency to 2/3 of the region. And then bus stops, that's an important upgrade, as well as maybe some new services too. We've heard people talk about things like Red Rocks, so you could imagine some service there as well. But really, it's about boosting what we've got. So that's the vision. Some people are visual, so we have a couple maps for you. So if you go to the next page, gives you a sense of right now in the broader RTD area, where is the frequent service? The dotted lines are the trains or the proposed train routes. Again, we put the whole fast track system on here because that's what voters voted for. The orange lines are the bus routes right now that are currently 15 minutes or better. So that's what we've got, or at least that's what is planned for 2026, which is the last vision that RTD has. They don't have anything beyond 2026. They're about to start that process and will develop their longer term vision in the next year, next 18 months. So for right now, this gets us to that 1/3 of the region. These are the frequent 15-minute or better bus service. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what it would mean if we had twice, if we had 65% or twice as many people having access to that frequent service. And what's probably best is comparing the two. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see them next to each other. And so you'll see the yellow lines, there's just a lot more of them. And that's the point here. We're trying to say we need a lot more lines on the map that are coming 15 minutes or better. Don't try too hard to figure out exactly what street those lines are. We are not bus designers. I would point you to our incredible colleagues at Greater Denver Transit, because they are doing a lot of really good analysis to figure out, okay, how do we maximize bus routes, bus systems? Where should those bus lines be going? We just took the current RTD map and colored in more of the lines just to try to indicate what's the extent of the reach if we did it today. So don't worry too much about literally where those lines are, but you can see every part of the region, a lot more lines, especially in the Denver core where we're at, as well as, out in Aurora. I mean, really the whole area, you can see a lot more of the frequency. So that's kind of a reason, this is kind of a way to try to envision what's the scope, how many more lines on the map, what does that actually look like? So if you go to the next slide, this is the we're not crazy slide. I mean, I guess we are crazy, but this is the we're not certifiably crazy, because some cities have actually done this. And an example is Seattle. Now, of course, Seattle is very different from Denver geographically, population-wise, a whole host of reasons Seattle is different. But in some ways, it's kind of a peer city. And so I don't think it's totally unscrupulous for us to actually look at Seattle and go, if they can do it, we can do it. And what this is attempting to do is on the left side there in 2015, you can see only about a quarter of their residents were within a frequent bus route or transit route. And over 10 years, they were able to invest in their service and boost their service up in a way that they are now at 72%, or they were at 72% of their population within easy access to frequent service. So this shows that over a decade, a city like Seattle was able to improve the amount of service to reach the kind of numbers we're talking about. And then on the right side, you'll see some of the results. And some of the results make sense. You'll see public transit use went up. There's actually more people walking as well. And then the number of people who are driving actually went down. And so even though Seattle grew, even though there were more people over the decade, the amount of new service they added led to more people choosing to take public transit, and actually fewer people driving, even though they actually had more people there. So this is the we have hope slide. This is the we think this is possible, but not to underestimate the fact that this will take a large investment of new dollars. We are not under any impression that RTD has the money currently in some bank account that they could just put into this, partly because they still haven't completed fast tracks and there's some things that they owe the region, and that certainly will make this complicated as well. But our hope today and our hope over the last 6 months has really been to say, listen, I don't know if this is the perfect vision, but we want to put a vision out there because we think now is the time. It's been 20 plus years. I think the next slide sums this up. It's been over 20 years. We think it's time to talk about something big, and we think that something big should be just getting more people access to that frequent service, that 15-minute or better service throughout more time. And so that's our vision. And we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear you weigh in on whether, oh yeah, that'd be great. That would work totally well for me. Or actually, you're missing something. We really need to fill this gap or to do this thing over here. So Jill, if you want to take it off the screen share, and that way it might be easier to see people if they want to come off mute or put something in the chat. Joel, however you want to facilitate this.
Yeah, typically we have people propose questions in the chat, and I'll just call on folks.
Perfect.
So we have
Joel and Danny. I think we actually have one more Menti polling slide if we want to do that
okay.
real quick.
Sure.
Oh, sure. Go for it. Yeah. So we do have one more. If you're still in Menti, thank you for hanging out there. There is one more question, and this also just helps us to get a better sense. How much do you think government leaders should be focusing on improving transit service? And then this question of ridership versus transit service, how much do you think they should be really focused on where people are most dependent on transit service versus where you think they can get the most ridership? There's a lot of overlap there, so that's the good news. You can get a lot of, but it is interesting to see how people would prioritize those two things. So we have about 7 people who have voted so far. If you're still in there, if you're not, the code is up at the top. And it'd be
We
great
can
if you,
leave this up while Joel starts sharing some questions from the audience.
yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Joel, if there's questions.
Yeah, we'll start at the bottom. Lucia had a question about resources. Lucia?
Hi there. So right now, RTD has a tremendous difficulty finding and keeping bus drivers.
Yeah.
It's a stat that GDT goes over every month, and it's not really getting any better. And so, with the increased frequencies, I mean, if we don't have the labor pool now, how are we going to have the labor pool in the future for these routes, increased frequency routes?
Yeah. So every one of those routes will take people. So we can either say there's no way we can recruit more people, and so there's no way we should pursue this vision. Or we can go, there's got to be a way to find more people. There's got to be a way to make this job, to help make this job something that, more people would want to do and more people would want to stick doing it. Based on the data that we've seen, it's retention that's a real problem at RTD. They have been recruiting more people in the last few years, but it's the retention. They're sort of spinning their wheels. So retention does feel like something that you can um, maybe not fix, but you can improve on. One of the reasons we have the ATU as part of this coalition is to gut check this kind of stuff. And while they're under no impression that they think tomorrow they could double the workforce, I think they're excited to go down this road with us. And so that gives us the optimism that this is possible. Again, Seattle, they doubled their service, or they did more than double their service. Again, totally different region, but there's got to be ways that we can do this. And so if people like this vision, then I think we move into that next step of, all right, how the heck do you pay for it and how the heck do you staff it? Which are huge questions, but questions that I don't think we can really move into unless people are down with the vision, because otherwise, why bother? But you're totally right. It's a massive challenge. Jill, do you want to take off the screen share now? Yeah, great.
And I would
Yeah,
just add to that, the RTD Accountability Committee that's just going to be releasing its recommendations any day now, focused a lot of attention specifically on this issue and has some recommendations specifically around labor and workforce development. So people are already talking about how to address this challenge.
Yeah. Other questions?
Thomas had a question about various agencies and municipalities.
Okay.
So one of the things that hasn't been well understood is how the split between resources and responsibilities for the transit system as a whole gets between the providers of the service and the providers of the infrastructure. So we have cities, municipalities, counties, and they usually aren't thought of in the equation of how to best make transit work and work well for people. So I'm wondering if you can thought through how your vision would allow and shift so that we're not just thinking about RTD and the contractors, but also how do these cities, municipalities, and counties participate to enhance the whole system.
Yeah, we're kind of interested. We're in this interesting chicken and egg situation. We have cities and counties, and this is coming up if any of you are in the housing space and talking about housing changes. You have a lot of cities and counties going, okay, well, we might make changes to our streets. We might, go denser in particular areas, but RTD doesn't provide the service. So why should we do that? And then RTD comes along and is like, well, why should we provide the service if people aren't using it to those areas yet because there's not the density or whatever it is. So part of your question I hear is just like, we're going to need a collaborative approach here. Our thought was let's start boosting the actual service. And right now really the only entity, there's a little bit up in Boulder with Via Mobility, and a few other small providers. But really, the only one that's kind of like running the buses and the trains is RTD. So if our vision is to get more buses and trains just running, then it's okay, let's boost up RTD. There is ways that this, assuming people are down with this vision, one way you could do it is you could say, well, some of that money should go to RTD, but some of it should go to the local cities and counties to provide some of the local service. So as we had in a slide earlier, there's been some successes in Montbello and other places to provide some smaller services. And so that's an open question. Like, is it more effective and efficient to have cities and counties start running some of this stuff? There's definitely some bureaucratic challenges with that, but there could be reasons that people would go, I trust city and county, to ramp up some of this. There's also been bigger picture questions about should RTD just become the regional transit agency, which its name says, and all the local routes are more run by local cities and counties. And then there's a lot of like get cities and counties the money and they'll buy up service. So maybe RTD runs it, but cities and counties are more directing it. And if they're directing the service, maybe they're more likely to also invest in the infrastructure on the ground as well. So kind of skin in the game arguments. So many different ways we can go. Transit is so complicated. There's so many different players. So there's a lot of ways we can go. You've identified that the collaboration, though, will be important. I think we've decided at the very least we should try to boost up the service thing. If that's the chicken, then that can create the egg. Or if that's the egg, that'll create the chicken, whichever way you want to go.
So it sounds like you're doing a lot to build consensus on that core idea. More transit, more frequency, get important players at the different municipalities, at the legislature, at the transit agencies to think now is the time to do something big without over specifying all these details of who runs it, how the money flows, et cetera. It's the big idea that you're seeding and saying now is the time.
Yeah, like as an organizer, I'm a big fan of you start with the idea. If you can't even get people on board with the idea, it's hard to get into all those other nuances of, what's the fee and what's the this and what's the that. So yeah, we really are in that very first phase of like, it's been 21 years. We don't think there's many other visions out there. So we're trying to fill that gap. And if it causes something to come together, great, let's do it. And we think ours is pretty good. But if there's better ones, let's get it out there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. You're welcome to stay and for the rest of the meeting, of course, or to respond to another couple questions in the chat. We're running about 10 minutes behind, so I am going to pivot to the next meeting, but thank you for all your work to bring a vision for the next phase of transit in the region.
Thanks, everyone.
Our third topic is Amy Kenreich talking about specifically what's happened. It's been in the press a lot about Alameda and some late changes to the design there well after the community had been involved in design and even after the final designs were supposedly about to be built. But this ties to a bigger question, and we will have a motion at the end of this. So please stay with us for the rest of the meeting and to vote on a motion. All right, Amy.
All right. Does that look good on your end, Joel?
Looks good.
Okay. I'll try to be quick. I only have about 100 slides here to show you guys. I am Amy Kenreich. I'm representing West Wash Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm going to talk to you about the Alameda Lane repurposing project that's been in the news recently, quite a bit over the last month. One of the things that made the news was the press conference that we held on December 11th. That's what the picture is in the lower right. This project was 5 years in the making. DOTI surprised West Wash Park with a new plan on November 7th. I'm going to break down what went wrong for you and review what happened over the last month. So making small changes or safety improvements to a project after it has been sent through the public feedback process is reasonable. But what DOTI Executive Director Amy Ford did with Alameda is redesign it. She did this after final engineering documents were produced and after a 5-year established community process. She used selective listening and took someone's fears and concerns about their own convenience and let that essentially cancel the Alameda Lane repurposing project. They changed it so much that it actually changed names. Instead of a full lane repurposing, it's a partial lane repurposing. She lets the people with the most power influence her decisions rather than inform them. Then she tried to cover it up. Why does Alameda matter? Why does this project matter to us all? There's significantly more crashes than comparable high injury network streets. For example, Evans Avenue, Lincoln to University, has half as many crashes as Alameda in the same span. Residents along Alameda have experienced cars crashing into homes, children have been struck by drivers, and there's chronic speeding and reckless driving. It's been unsafe for decades. What happened here was 5 years of feedback supporting the original design was effectively discarded. If we can't stomach improving safety on Alameda Avenue through Wash Park, then we're not going to get it anywhere else in our city. Currently, Alameda is a 4-lane road with 2 lanes each direction. So this video, I'll play it again, shows what the full lane repurposing, the original project, would have done to Alameda Avenue. Here it is one more time. Here is these are 2 typical crashes. First, you'll see a rear end, and then you'll see a side swipe right after that. Examples of crashes that are happening today on Alameda Avenue. So that's the rear end, and a side swipe. Side swipe happens pretty quick. Okay, and then here's the last typical crash. This one is a sightline issue. You can see this driver wants to turn left, but they can't see the far oncoming lane of traffic. So they get T-boned. This graphic shows you the current configuration on the left, the full lane repurposing, the original project that was vetted with the community, and then the partial lane repurposing that was announced November 7th. Just to note that this road diet, the full lane repurposing, is one of the most effective and least expensive safety interventions a city can do. Reduces crashes by almost 50%. So like I said, this project was finalized and scheduled for construction. Construction notices were delivered in April 25. The city notes that they did business outreach in early 2025 and heard no opposition to the lane reduction. Residents were notified that construction would be completed in 2025. But there was a sudden pivot. Without communication to West Wash Park Neighborhood Association, DOTI changed course. On November 7th, the finalized full lane repurposing or road diet was replaced by a partial lane repurposing, keeping 4 lanes of traffic. This will cost an extra $100,000. This decision was communicated with our neighborhood association via press release, not community process. This was a major change done behind closed doors. You might be asking, what's wrong with the partial lane repurposing? Some of you might have heard our mayor, I think it was it this week or last week? I'm not sure. The Last 9 News story on this. He was interviewed. They were asking him questions, and he said one of his points was this is a compromise. It's a compromise in safety, is what it is. Here's what's wrong with the partial lane repurposing. It's not a road diet anymore because 4 lanes of traffic will remain. Pedestrians will have no buffer from fast-moving traffic, the same conditions that we see on Alameda today. The 2 eastbound lanes will now be free of delays from people slowing down to turn left. DOTI downgraded safety on Alameda Avenue, a high-injury network street, and created a new problem. 2 unencumbered lanes eastbound that will only encourage more speeding. DOTI didn't just downgrade safety, they created a new risk. Westbound drivers who want to make a left turn will still have the same sightline problem they have today. We saw that in the last video. In addition to the disappointment of hearing that the road diet was canceled, we've also uncovered by Cora request that DOTI has been misrepresenting some key facts. In September, Amy Ford told the DOTI Advisory Committee this project is moving forward. However, what we know is on August 14th, DOTI sent an email to their contractor, Kimley Horn, and they said, we've been working with leadership to triage some high-level community and leadership concerns and recently received clear direction on a path forward. And that was the partial lane repurposing. So that was not true. This project was not moving forward. In November, Amy Ford told the DOTI Advisory Committee this had nothing to do with a lobbyist. But what we know is June 9th, DOTI held a concerned stakeholders meeting with Jill Anschutz and hired lobbyist Jason Gallardo. And then this month in January, Amy Ford wrote back to the city council after they wrote a letter to her. And Amy Ford said, the decision to adjust the design was made late October, early November, which of course is not true. August 14th is when they had made the decision by August 14th. And this is just a quote from Brett Boncour's email to Kimley Horn. Director Ford claimed that the partial lane repurposing is just as safe, but DOTI specifically removed the safety analysis from the scope of work with their contractor, Kimley Horn. Later, DOTI provided some data to 9 News and West Marshall, called this back of the envelope engineering. So DOTI, just to reiterate, DOTI removed the safety analysis from their contract with Kimley Horn, claimed that the project was just as safe, and that's what West Marshall called back of the envelope engineering and gave a C-. There are several reasons DOTI says that they changed this project. The first 2 in this list were used both to justify the original plan and the partial plan. Reducing driver delays. Ford said reducing driver delay is the reason for the change. Originally, the goal of this project was to slow drivers down to a consistent and predictable speed. Now, driver delay has become the reason why DOTI changed the project. Cut-through traffic. DOTI originally described cut-through traffic as minimal, but now is using it as a reason for drastically downgrading the project. Fact is, cut-through traffic happens, I'm scrolling with my mouse. Cut-through traffic happens today on Alameda Avenue. DOTI also says they changed the plan because they're taking a comprehensive view of safety. Ford said she's taking a comprehensive view of safety by reducing the chance of cut-through traffic on side streets like Virginia. In other words, they made the safety downgrade to Alameda to avoid 1 car every 4 minutes diverting to Virginia. It just doesn't add up. And here's my question for you all to contemplate as I skip through these next slides. What do you guys think causes cut-through traffic? Do you think 51 crashes a week or 51 crashes a year might do it? Who supports the original plan? DOTI Advisory Board, Mayor's Pedestrian Advisory Committee, 9 city council members, 1,100 West Wash Park and East Wash Park petition signers. 9 city council members is listed twice. Whose voices carry more weight? Over 1,000 signatures from the West Wash Park petition or the Anschutz petition. This raises a fundamental question. Who is DOTI prioritizing and why? These are the numbers on the petitions when the petitions were sent to the mayor, by the way. This is not an isolated case. There's a pattern under Ford's leadership. West 29th Avenue, 2 miles were supposed to be a protected bike lane, but a half mile of the 2-mile length was changed to a painted bike lane. South Irving Street, the protected bike lane was scrapped to prioritize parking. Market and Blake, the mayor and DOTI removed flex posts in between the Zeklas. These acted as vertical delineation and visual friction. They claimed it was so people could see into the stores. Safety consistently loses to convenience and influence. So what can Inc. take from this? Well, we can either maybe do a GoFundMe for all the Alameda neighbors and buy these decorative boulders for them. Or we can demand transparency and late stage changes. We can insist on clear standards that prevent quiet redesigns. And we can support neighbors when the process breaks down. And that is all I have for you guys.
Okay. I didn't see a lot of questions in the chat. Feel free to ask them if you have them, but it was certainly a lot of support coming in, people with various supportive comments. I'm sure you'll read those. Let me pivot. So Interneighborhood Cooperation is an association of neighborhood groups across the city. And for INC to take a position on something, all the delegates representing neighborhood groups that make up INC across the city would have to vote on it. INC believes strongly that each neighborhood should be listened to about topics near them. So when INC takes a position, it tends to be a little higher level, broad principles. So in that regard, Amy and I have collaborated to come up with a draft motion for this committee to consider sending to the delegates. And again, the delegates, that is the representatives of the neighborhood organizations, will, if we send it to them, will vote on it. That has that altitude of what's the big picture issue here, and we'll see what you think about this. So here's the draft motion. Hopefully the text isn't too small, but I'm making this motion. I move that the INC Transportation Committee recommend to the INC delegation creating and transmitting a letter based on the following position points, sending it to the mayor, executive director of DOTI, and to city council. The first 2 points reiterate positions INC has already taken. For 50 years, INC has been calling for full, authentic, and meaningful neighborhood involvement in topics that affect neighborhoods, and this does include the change of street design to protect lives and make streets safer for everyone. The second reiteration of previous points is reaffirming our commitment to eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries. INC took a position among the first organizations to call for Vision Zero, eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries. Here's what's new. INC is concerned with a pattern of late changes to street safety projects long after public input is concluded and designs were supposedly finalized. As you heard from Amy, it's not just Alameda. It's happening in many places. Another one that Amy didn't mention that I believe fits this pattern exactly is West Colfax. They designed, with tremendous community involvement, a much safer design for West Colfax with a raised median, and that was on the books, that was to be built. And I watched the Zoom meeting where DOTI told them, oh, we don't have enough money. We're going to build it without the safety features, and the contractors have been given notice to proceed. And it was only neighborhoods making a tremendous amount of noise, sort of, virtually saying, we will lie in front of the bulldozers, and communicating clearly we'd rather have no change than rush a change that doesn't have the safety features, that finally got DOTI to find some money to do it well. DOTI does deserve credit for finding the money to do it well, but it's part of this same pattern where after community input was finalized, they changed the project, reduced safety features, and were going to go forward. So the final point, INC calls on the mayor and DOTI to rapidly implement street safety changes after community-involved designs are complete, so go fast, and if post-engagement design changes become necessary, apply a no net loss of safety standards, including completing and releasing a level of service safety study, and publicly disclosing and justifying post-engagement changes that affect safety. And Amy can talk more about what these terms mean. And providing neighborhoods a meaningful opportunity to review and compare original and revised designs before implementation. So this is the motion. We can take questions on the motion, and some of the terminology came from Amy, who can speak to it best.
I'll just go ahead and chime in on level of service. and safety. It should be level of service of safety. I forgot to give you that edit, Joel. So level of service and safety analysis is different than what DOTI has specifically released relating to safety on Alameda Avenue, which has been crash analysis. That's what DOTI has been doing. But industry standard is level of service of safety analysis. So the difference is crash analysis looks at all of the crashes that have happened over the time period they analyze and whether the changes to the street would have mitigated those specific crashes. But a level of service of safety takes into consideration the instead of just individual hotspots, it's the entire corridor, and all of the looks at the road as a system. And additionally, most importantly, takes into consideration things like reducing the number of lanes on the street, adding a pedestrian buffer, things that are proven safety countermeasures to account for the safety increase or decrease of certain elements that are known to change the safety of the road. So just because a pedestrian hasn't been killed by a car hopping the curb, for example, that a level of service of safety analysis would give credit to the pedestrian buffer, even though a crash hasn't happened in that specific instance.
Thank you. You can raise your hands if you have other questions on the motion, and Amy, I will get with you before we forward this to make sure that terminology is exactly right. And I'm seeing John Rickey.
Hi, yes, thank you. It concerns me that you even got level of service in there because that's what they're using to justify. So reducing the safety. So if you can even just take out the word service somewhere and I don't know, call it level of safety or something. I don't want any chance for them to misinterpret what's being asked for. Thank you.
Let me, so this is actually an industry term, level of service of safety. And it's different than level of service, which I have just learned through this process. So I'm going to put in the chat a link to the technical definition of level of service of safety, because it's very different than level of service, which is what John and I have been used to hearing, which is how many vehicles can you move through an intersection or a place at a time. So I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you, and I'll be sure to revise the terminology before we send this on. Tatiana.
Hi, I was just wondering, it doesn't specifically say to reinstate anything for Alameda on this. I know it should, protect things going forward since this is a pattern, but I just wanted to mention that I think maybe adding something just saying like we also support the original design.
Yeah, thank you. It's always an interesting fine line to walk with a whole network of neighborhoods throughout the city. There's a reluctance and an understandable reluctance in INC for a bunch of neighborhoods to say what they want to see happen in one neighborhood. So this is really kind of trying to walk that line of what's the principles here. And the principles are neighborhoods should be listened to. Changes shouldn't be made after public input, especially that change the safety aspects. So in consultation with my colleagues on the INC leadership, I think this hits that sweet spot. And Amy and I think would be happy if INC made this because it adds to the overall chorus, even though it's not specific to one particular corridor. Alejandra?
Yeah, thank you. I think one thing that gives me pause is the last bullet point, sub-bullet point. So perhaps because it could just become people who are opposed to a project just demand a meaningful opportunity. Maybe saying to ensure that safety is prioritized or safety is first, or something related back to the safety first policy that DOTI has published, something like that to ensure that, it's not just people who are opposed to the change, but elevating safety as the most important factor.
So a phrase at the end there, to ensure safety is the top priority, something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make that change. I
Thank you.
can't edit the slide while we're showing it, so if everyone can kind of visually, mentally read in to ensure that safety is a top priority at the very end there. Okay, so the process, and we don't do this very often, is to take a vote of the committee and then report that vote to the INC board, who will refer it to the delegates. So we'll use the raise hand feature. If you're in favor, and everyone's allowed to vote, there's no special status you need to vote here. If you're in favor of this committee forwarding this to the INC delegates, please use the raise hand feature. Okay, I'll give a minute. And again, everybody who's present is welcome to vote. There's no qualifications. All right, I see 18, and it won't let me do mine because I'm doing this. Adrian, 19. So with myself and Adrian, because Lucia and Adrian are logged in together, that makes 20. All right, if you will put your hands down.
I think there was a late hand up, so I'd say 21.
21, all right. I think I saw something pop up as people were changing it, so we'll say 21. If you are opposed to this committee forwarding this to the delegates, please raise your hand. And we'll give some time.
So Joel, I don't know how to say this, but I don't plan to vote either way. I don't really feel I know enough about it to make a decision here. So that's why, and I can't find the hand, so I'm just neutral.
Okay, that's certainly fine. And again, I would expect that even more folks if we were trying to weigh in on we like one design or another for a particular corridor, but certainly on any vote, nobody's obliged to vote. So we have 21 for, 0 against, and 1 person noting that they're not voting. Thank you very much. All right, I will be communicating this to the INC board on the next couple days. It does take a little while for INC to take positions. They want to be sure that all neighborhoods have a chance to review motions, discuss amongst themselves, come back and vote. So this will play out over the next couple months. Amy, thank you so much. Thank you for all the leadership you've been showing and getting press attention and everything else in your neighborhood on this very important topic. This is not just another road. This is an arterial on the high injury network. These are the places where the deaths and serious injuries are occurring.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. And I just want to note that it's amazing to see people that have never been involved in advocacy before in this area of town coming out of the woodwork. There are so many people backing me up, and we're working together. We really are.
Thank you so much. All right, the final topic is mine tonight. It's a call for participation to update INC's transportation position statements. And I'll try to go through this quickly, but I'm going to put the punchline in the chat here, and that is it's a call for participation for INC transportation position statements, and it's going to have typos in it. And please write to transportation@denverinc.org if you would like to help. We're going to move pretty quick on this. We're going to do this in about 2 months. And we can do that because this is an update to our existing document. We're not starting with a blank page. So quickly, INC position statements are thematic collected positions based on citywide INC neighborhood consensus. And what I mean by that is because this is a collection of neighborhood groups, naturally different neighborhood groups have different priorities and different opinions. That's totally normal. And in cases where there is great consensus, that's powerful because neighborhoods come from different places in every dimension, geographically, economically, ethnically, etc. When there is a consensus, it deserves to be amplified. So we have a long tradition of having these thematic collected position statements. In INC bylaws, these are called official positions. They're very helpful in organizing the direction that that neighborhoods want to see the city go, the issues we want addressed, improvements are needed, and they tend to be things that take time to work on. Individual positions that are adopted from time to time might be more immediate, but these collected positions tend to be things that will take a little while. We have current position statement collections on transportation, zoning and planning, and parks and rec. You may have heard them referred to as platforms. That's because a previous INC president was sort of a politico himself, and he liked the term platforms because it sounded very political. But we've been doing this for a long time. As a matter of fact, I was doing a deep dive into the INC archives this summer as part of orientation for new INC board members, and I came across old newsletters where they were really in the rhythm of doing this every single year. This is a newsletter from 1995, and the newsletter, which was a printed newsletter at the time, had repeated reminders that as part of registering your neighborhood with INC each year, you got the ability to vote on the position statements. And it was like clockwork for many, many years. So again, please remember to pay your dues before the March meeting, and you can vote on the position statements from this 1995 newsletter. And this is very small text, but it's fascinating to look back that INC used to take position statements, these collected position statements, on a wide range of topics. These are education position statements, healthcare and environment position statements, housing position statements, metropolitan growth strategy position statements. And you'll notice this is a kind of red line without color. So the underlined tells the reader these are the changes from last year. So it's very much showing it was a living process. And the key message that I had for the INC board this summer was, because they did this regularly, people remembered that these positions had been taken by all the neighborhoods across Denver. Right now, our current collected position statements are about 10 years old, the platforms, and many of our delegates don't remember that we have them. And that's a problem with not doing it frequently enough. So here we have transportation position statements. And again, this is historical, but I'm trying to illustrate the long-standing practice that INC has had with this. It's not just platforms we did once 10 years ago, which are the current ones, but has been part of INC for a long time. So transportation position statements from 95 included mass transit, air quality, traffic in Denver neighborhoods, individual mobility, including bikes, the airport, etc. And then there were zoning and land use ones. And yet another reminder, you got to get your organization paid their $25 dues or whatever it was, so you can vote on these position statements. So in 2015, INC last adopted our platform, or transportation position statements. And these are just some highlights that were in there that we're going to celebrate and remove because, or adapt to do. So we called on the city to adopt the Vision Zero goal. In our new version, we'll probably say something like, please be more serious about it, right? Deaths have gone up since this, not down. We called on a centrally funded and managed program to preserve and complete the sidewalk network. Yeah, we might have something to say about the program, but very successful with the help of a large network of folks led by Denver Streets Partnership in getting Denver Reserve sidewalks on the ballot and passed. Slower speeds in neighborhoods has been a consistent goal of RNOs. And what's illustrated to the right here is having adopted these positions, it gives INC the opportunity to tactically communicate these and reiterate them throughout the year. So if something comes up and it makes sense to the board that it's not a new position, it's just stating something we've already said, they can be cited. And this was an example of a letter that a past president, Loretta Kaler, sent citing our position statements. Moving street maintenance into the regular budget rather than using bond funding for street maintenance. This came up during the Elevate Denver Bond Program when we were able to cite, among many other things, that INC had called for regular budget funding for street maintenance, not using bond funds. And innovative transit transit options, neighborhood parking permit programs, which are being revised, but we should probably find out what's going on with that. More comprehensive complete streets policy and guidelines, which has been completed since then. An update to Blueprint Denver, which has been done, and a very important diagram was included in the new Blueprint Denver off to the right. And I'm not saying, by the way, that all these things happened because INC called for it, but because INC found the consensus, INC neighborhoods were more coordinated in pushing for it, and electeds and those working in staff understood there's already a consensus to do these things, which itself is important. So lots and lots of examples. These slides came from the presentation that I gave to the INC board, orienting them to the importance of these position statements. So the request of you all is, you can see, I'm just sort of going through some of the things that are in this document that we've had success on, calling for bus rapid transit corridors. We have, Denver Moves Transit came around in 2019, 4 years after this plan, and some corridors are starting to move forward, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a successful practice, but it's not been successful in that we haven't done it regularly, and people have forgotten that there's this consensus. We need to go back to the neighborhoods and ensure and update this, find where the consensus is, and then repeat it, and hopefully make this a more regular practice of INC. I'm looking at these things. I think I've said everything that's on this slide already. So here's the deal. On December 8th, the INC board voted to ask the Transportation Committee and the Zoning and Planning Committees to update the position statements in their areas. So over the next couple months, we're targeting bringing this back. This committee meets every other month, so not March, but May, coming back to this committee with a completed proposed set of position statements for this committee to review and vote to move to the INC delegation. So if you're willing to put in a little bit of time, I expect we'll be meeting generally by email and by Zoom. We'll be going through the existing collected position statements, identifying the ones that are out of date, celebrating the ones that have been achieved, updating the ones that need updating, and adding things that we think need to be added, with an eye towards finding the things that are of great general consensus across the city. Again, in the end, the delegates from across the city have to vote for this. So we're looking for those things that everyone is probably supportive of across the city. So please drop a note to transportation@denverinc.org if you want to be a part of the working group. And this won't be an official set of positions until the delegation votes on it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see any chat. And thank you for listening to that. Thank you, Amy. Can I share this? Yes, we'll be putting up the high resolution video from this online. If you want me to send you something, please drop me an email. But I'll be putting this up on the INC YouTube channel in the next day or two. How many position statements you have to go through? I think it's about a 10-page document of numbered items, but they are grouped thematically. Kind of bike ones and walking ones and transit ones are all kind of grouped together. So I don't think reviewing the existing ones takes much time. Do the ones that still need to carry forward, should they be reworded? What should we ask for? How should we ask for it? And what are we missing? And that's the kind of thing that I think we can do with just a little bit of facilitation remotely. And if we want to meet, we certainly can. So I'll be looking for your email. And if I don't hear from you, I may be reaching out to you and saying, hey, why don't you help with this?
I'll help with that. It doesn't sound like too much work.
Yeah, no, it's great when you're not starting with a blank page. Jill Locantore and others on this call were part of 10 years ago developing what we have now. And so thank you for your past service, and I hope you weren't so traumatized you won't consider doing it again. All right, we've reached the end of our meeting. INC Transportation Committee meetings are every other month on odd-numbered months, second Thursday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. via Zoom. Please send in ideas for topics that you think will be meaningful, and please look for the upload of this to share with people who weren't able to make it to the meeting. We'll be putting this on the INC YouTube channel in the next couple days. Thanks, everyone.